there's only but so many leadership opportunities. There's only so many members on staff. How do you keep people engaged? How do you keep people growing? And so, um, Summer, I'll let you take first shot at this one to give your thoughts, and then I'll circle back with some things I have in mind.
Certainly. Well, I love that we received this question because I think it's something that all businesses, all people leaders should be thinking about. But we know they're so busy that oftentimes, we were just talking about kind of that planning ahead. There's just not always that much time to it. So this question tells me that, this person's thinking about what can I do to retain my team and keep them happy. And that is a really important factor in retention. So, I've worked in large, like enormous organizations and really small teams where this is a regular challenge. You've got maybe one person who's in, the senior level role, maybe they're a VP or a director, and then you have maybe just one, two, or just a few who are more like hands-on in the trenches day to day, and that gap to get from like the day to day to that more senior role, like feels impossible. And it can be discouraging for team members because they may feel like, well, like the position I'm in is the position I'm in. I'll never be in that role. So the only way to grow is to leave. And that's like, no,
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
what we want to try to avoid. So I think this is definitely a challenge that all companies face in like to one degree or another. But it's something that all companies should have a plan for.
Yeah, and it really boils down to, and I think we've mentioned this on a recent show, is thinking about the career journey of a team member and how to keep them engaged and excited about the work that's in front of them today, and the opportunity to have different work in the future. So I like to think about staying in a role, as getting like reps, right? So like getting reps. I went to the gym yesterday, a live gym for the first time in a long time. Um, and, there were machines there where you don't get stronger just by doing some reps. You get stronger by doing a lot of reps with many different sets. Thinking about getting stronger and building a great foundation of your knowledge of your current role is incredibly important. And when you get more reps, you get more variety, you get more complexity, you get to challenge different things about your approach. And if you have a great manager, you get to even get some feedback on how you're doing in the different areas. So I I have been in small business for almost my entire career, but I find that joy in your profession isn't always just about elevation. It's about, you know, does the team, do we have a mission that we can believe in? Do I have a great relationship with my manager? Am I developing into the professional that I would hope to have become? And then are there opportunities for growth and development that might mean either cross training or upskilling or whatever the case may be? And that doesn't have to be, uh, you know, going into a new position, but it could also mean having different tiers within a role. So, for example, accountant one, accountant two, accountant three. Those are some of the things that you could do to improve the employee experience if there isn't, opportunities to get into a leadership position.
I really enjoyed so much of what you said there, Joey. I feel like there was so many nuggets of info buried in that because I think when it comes to elevating in one's career and what equates to job satisfaction, aka to retention, it isn't always upward. Now, I think, you know, if you were to ask folks maybe 15, 20 years ago, there was this concept that like you had to move up on the ladder, right, to be more successful. But I think now there's a much broader understanding that depth in role and other factors also equate to, kind of that definition of success and happiness. And, we help small companies with this, even if they're just, a team who's like less, like less than five. I think about a couple clients specifically that we worked on career paths for. And it wasn't that they necessarily had all of these roles today, but they had a foundational team and they wanted to make sure that that team understood that there was a future for them at the company and what that looked like what the measures of success and what that experience requirement looked like so that they could stay focused on if that was the direction they wanted to go. They had an understanding of what they like the gap that they would need to fill in order to travel there. And I thought that that was really wise because they are looking to grow, but it's going to probably be steady. And it was really important for them to retain and continue to develop the team that they had over time.
Yeah. As you were talking, it was super organic, so I don't even know if it's going to show up on film. But I I have this book that was given to me as a gift, and it's called Range by David Epstein, and it's a New York Times number one bestseller. Why generalists triumph in a specialized world, and I think about that especially in the small business context, where you know being in a small team, it's actually a great opportunity to build some diverse skills from the seat that you're in, because then you have a more holistic view of whether the business challenges that you all solve from an organizational standpoint or within your department or whatever the case may be. And so I'll drop a link to the book if you're interested. It's called Range. And yeah, it's a New York Times bestseller. It's still selling off the charts. I think I got this book in 2019. But Malcolm Gladwell said he loves this book. So if you're a fan of Malcolm, then he's vouching for it. But yeah, I think that there's a lot you can do if you are a leader of a small team to grow your team without having to or without the opportunity to place people into new roles. Not everybody wants, a next layer of leadership. I think that we just assume that everyone who is good at what they do, they want to be promoted into a leadership role. Some people would love to just be good at what they do and stay that way throughout their role, whether that's as an independent contributor or a team player. Think about if you have a really good baker, right? Like, are you gonna say, all right, now you're a really good baker, now run the restaurant, right? Well, you may not want to run the restaurant. You may want to just be able to perfect the different aspects of baking or make different things as a baker. And so I think that we assume that people want the responsibility of leadership without having the conversation to say, hey, what would be a meaningful next step for you? Is it to learn more skills? Is it to develop the tools in your toolkit for your current role? Or is it a leadership opportunity? Because, as you know, um, even that's a different discipline, and most people aren't trained for the discipline of management.
You're so right. And when I think about the conversations that I've had with, various executives at a wide variety of companies about, specific things that they can do in this regard, it does start with having that conversation and understanding what is it that your team members would value and what is it that they would gain the most satisfaction from. It's different for every person. And some want to be pushed, some don't. And you talk about those folks that are experts within their role who don't want to go anywhere else. Those are essential to your organization. Those are the folks I call them keep in position you need a chunk of your talent in that space because you can't develop everybody to the same, manager or upward level. And so some of the things, just to kind of give some examples of what leaders can do depending on their organization, is first starting with that conversation, finding out what is it that your team member wants to accomplish. Then you can start thinking about how do I make that happen? Is that possible within my organization? Some of the things that can help build skills are cross functional teams, gaining exposure to other functions that they wouldn't otherwise have exposure to. And then that whole concept of being a generalist. Joey, a number of years ago, I was building a team from very early career entry level skill set. And so I found these folks that were just really eager to learn anything, and who just had the enthusiasm that just could not, like did not quit. And what we ultimately ended up doing was placing folks where like the company had a need at that time. Like we hired for a role and we trained them on everything that they needed in that area of HR. And then when they became proficient, we just moved everybody around. It was kind of like a clock. We just switched seats. So now one person who was like the coordinator for compliance was now working on leave of absence. The person on leave of absence then went over to benefits. So it was slowly kind of turning the dial and moving folks into a slightly different area where they could then build that generalist knowledge. And after a few years, many of them, they did outgrow the company. And, that's always kind of a tough place to be. But that during that time, the company and the team was really happy with what we were doing. And sometimes you do have to see the team onto their next position, if we're going to continue developing the talent. There's unfortunately just not always a space for everybody at the level in which they're rising.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean the reality is no one, uh, people don't stay in roles or at organizations forever. But if your goal is to retain and grow and have people become better at their role than when they joined, I love that idea of rotating teams and building out capacity in different ways, because then you have that cross mentorship or that peer mentorship of like, hey, I know you just had this role. I've got this challenge. What would you do if you were in my position? And I just think that's a great approach to talent development, is to let the students become the teachers, and then you oversee and make sure that everything stays on the rails.